were all Jewish. Okay? So then after providing 4 proofs that God has not rejected the Jewish people, now the Apostle Paul starts talking about something that he refers to as a great mystery. Okay, let me put it up here. Verses 25 to 26. I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved. So I put 32 verses up there because that's really the challenge in today's sermon, because we're looking at, Jan came up and read an extended reading of 32 verses. I got to be honest with you, it's going to be impossible for me to tell you everything that those 32 verses say. Okay? Maybe we can hang out afterwards. Maybe meet me in the community center after we do the ribbon cutting in the playground. And if you sit down with me, if you come and sit down with me, we'll go verse by verse, okay? But I don't have time. It's not possible here to do that for you, okay? All right, but what I'm going to do is give you the big idea. I want to give you the big idea so that then you later this week can go back and say, man, this is what the pastor said was the big idea. That's going to help me to go through it again, read it again, and let's see what other insight the Holy Spirit can give me about this passage, okay? Does everybody understand? I can't summarize everything. Well, Pastor, what about verse 15? I didn't have time about verse 15, but I talked about verse 16, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, now, the big idea that Paul is presenting here is that there's a spiritual ricochet that's happening. Does everybody know what a ricochet is? Like if a bullet goes out and it hits the wall or the ground at a certain angle, what does it do? It bounces off the ground. And then it might hit the glass, and because it hit the glass, it changes the trajectory. Does that make sense? There's something that's happening to the gospel here, and he's providing that for us. There's a spiritual ricochet. You got to keep that in mind because that's the big idea of Romans 11. Let me show you the first part of the ricochet. Okay, I put a chart up here. So I was just thinking, and God said, okay, put it this way. Okay, well, follow me. The gospel of Jesus goes into the world. But Paul reveals in Romans 11 that there's a partial hardening that has happened among the Jewish people. You see that double line there? So the gospel comes to the Jews first, but there's a partial hardening that happens. And as a result of the partial hardening, this is the first part of the great mystery, now the gospel is able to go to the Gentiles. You see this pattern in the book of Acts. What does Paul do in every town and every village he goes to? What's his first stop? He goes to it starts with an S. He goes to the what? Synagogue. And in the synagogue, he preaches the gospel of Jesus. But what often happened to Paul in those synagogues? There were some people that believed, but he also faced what? Rejection. He faced opposition. They wanted to kill him. Okay? As a matter of fact, they wanted to hurt him so bad that they followed him when he went to the next town over. Okay? So what did he do? After the rejection in the synagogue, what's the next thing Paul does? Does he stop preaching the gospel? No. But now he goes to the marketplace. He goes to the town centers. And now to the Gentile people, he proclaims the gospel of Christ. So the mystery is that the hardening that happens with Israel now gives Paul the opportunity to go and take the gospel to the streets, to people who don't know Christ. Are you following me? This is the mystery. That partial hardening now opens the gospel to go. Why? Because if they had all received it, Paul would have stayed in the synagogue. And he would have never taken the gospel to the marketplace. Look at how God moves in mysterious ways. But does the mystery stop here? No, there's more to the mystery. Okay, let's keep going. That's why I put ... This is only the first part. Let me go back and read a little bit more. Okay? Whatever you see in those parentheses, that's something I've included, okay? Just for clarification. So verses 30 to 32. Just as you, he's referring to the Gentiles, who were at one time disobedient to God, have now received mercy as a result of Israel's disobedience. So let's stop right there. Israel's disobedience to believing Jesus is the Messiah has now created an opportunity for God's mercy to be shed upon the Gentiles who are outside of the church. Everybody get that? Do you understand that? Verse 31. Let's keep going with the spiritual ricochet. So they, Israel, too, have now become disobedient in order that they, Israel, too, may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you, Gentiles. So the gospel going to the Gentiles has now put both Gentiles and Jews in the same place, both in disobedience to God. But their state of disobedience now allows the gospel to go to both of them. For God has bound all men, Jew and Gentile, over to disobedience so that he may have mercy on them all, Jew and Gentile. All right, let's go back to the graph. Okay, let's follow it. Remember, I'm giving you the big idea. I'm not talking about everything. I'm giving you the big idea. Okay, watch it. Here we go. Follow me. Over here, over here. Follow me over here. First part of the ricochet, gospel goes to the Jews, but there's a partial hardening. There's a temporary hardening. That enables the gospel now to go to the Gentiles. But because the Gentiles have received the gospel, have all Gentiles received the gospel? Say no. No, they haven't. But the gospel has gone to the Gentiles. Now, through their disobedience, now the Jews become in the same position as the Gentiles, both in disobedience and rebellion against God. So now so here comes the ricochet. Gospel goes through the Gentiles, now back to the Jews. Do you see that? Everybody see that? This is why Paul talks about spiritual envy. Did you read that? Did you remember reading? She said, Jan read that for us, that I might provoke some to envy. What does that mean? That means, man, when the Jewish people see believers that are Gentiles, man, look at their love. Look at their joy. Look at their peace. Where do you have that? We have the law, but we don't have that joy. We don't have that love. We don't have that self-control. That's something other. Where'd you get that? You got that from Jesus? I want that too. They give me Jesus as well. Are you following? Here's what I think Paul is saying. This is me now speaking. Okay? This is not here. This is me telling you. I think what Paul is trying to tell us is that Jesus is coming back. And when Jesus returns, there's going to be one final, humongous harvest of people coming to Christ. Just think about it. It makes sense to me. Jesus is coming back, and God's like, one more harvest. One more harvest of all people groups. From every nation, every tribe, every people. They were hardened only partially. They were hardened only temporarily. But now, there's coming a time where that hardening is going to be lifted. And just like the Gentiles received the gospel, so will the Jewish people receive the gospel. This is what Paul is saying to us. And through the reception of the gospel of both Jew and Gentiles, now all Israel will be saved. Are you following me? Why am I including Gentiles into true Israel? Because there's only one tree. There's only one tree that you could be grafted into or grafted back into. Are you following me? Let's talk about the tree again. So we've got two trees. We got a wild tree. We got a cultivated tree. What does it mean to be a cultivated tree? It means that somebody's actually what? Taking care of it. Somebody's pruning it. Somebody's watering it. Somebody's fertilizing. The wild tree is doing what? It's growing how? Wildly. Okay? That's why it's called the wild tree. So the people in the wild tree represent the Gentiles who are far from God. And the gospel is going to the Gentile nations. And what is God doing? As every person that in the Gentile world hears the gospel, receives Christ, what is God doing? He takes them off of the wild tree, and then God, through his grace, grafts them into the cultivated tree. Those in the cultivated tree that have experienced a partial hardening and a temporary hardening have been broken off of that tree, and they're not on the tree anymore. But the gospel is going to all people, even to those who were partially hardened and those who were temporarily hardened. The gospel is going to them. And so through the gospel going to them and them receiving the gospel, now God is going to graft back those who were broken off. Everybody understand what I'm saying? So that through their belief, through the wild tree's beliefs, through the broken off tree's belief, now all Israel will be saved.